Commander Jessica Martinez watched the holographic display spiral above her desk, its soft blue light illuminating the otherwise dim command center buried deep within Mount Cheyenne. The clock read 300 hours, and she was nursing her 5th cup of coffee. Black, bitter, and strong enough to wake the dead. Just the way she liked it. Another quiet night defending humanity, she muttered, swiping through the latest incursion reports. 3 Class II scout ships had attempted to penetrate Earth's atmosphere in the past 12 hours. All 3 have been quietly redirected into harmless orbital paths, their crews none the wiser. To them, Earth's gravity had simply been unusually turbulent, a perfectly natural phenomenon for a primitive, developing world. The Global Defense Network's command center hummed with quiet efficiency. Quantum computers processed petabytes of data per second, monitoring every cubic millimeter of space within 2 light-years of Earth. To any outside observer, the facility wouldn't even register as a military installation. Official records listed it as a deep storage server farm for cat videos and social media posts. Lieutenant Ryan Cooper, her night shift analyst, approached with a tablet in hand. "Ma'am, you might want to see this." His usually relaxed demeanor had an edge to it. "We're picking up some unusual patterns in the Kuiper Belt." Martinez set down her coffee and expanded the holographic display. Hundreds of tiny dots appeared, each representing a sensor node in their vast detection network. 3 of them were pulsing red. "Show me," she commanded, her fingers dancing through the projection to zoom in on the anomalies. "At first, we thought it was standard background radiation," Cooper explained, pulling up the raw data. "But there's a pattern. Every 12 minutes and 37 seconds, we get a spike in quantum fluctuations. It's like something's testing our blind spots." Martinez felt her spine tingle. In 15 years of running the grid, she learned to trust her instincts. Run it through the Harbinger protocol. Compare it to every known stealth signature in the database. Cooper's fingers flew over his tablet. The quantum processors hummed louder, processing the request. Seconds later, the hologram shifted, overlaying historical data onto the current readings. Martinez's blood ran cold. "Holy shit," Cooper whispered. The pattern was unmistakable. 15 years ago, just before the Ravager invasion, their deep space sensors had detected identical quantum fluctuations. But this signature was more refined, more deliberate. Whatever was out there was using technology far beyond anything they'd encountered before. "Initiate Silent Protocol Alpha," Martinez ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline now coursing through her veins. "And get me Dr. Anderson on the quantum line." Throughout the command center, screens flickered as systems shifted to maximum alert status. Yet to the outside world, nothing changed. Global internet traffic continued its normal flow. Civilian satellites maintained their regular broadcasting patterns. Even their own military channels stayed filled with routine chatter about training exercises and equipment maintenance. The perfect camouflage wasn't silence. It was noise. Normal, boring, everyday noise. A scratchy voice emerged from the quantum communicator. "Do you have any idea what time it is, Jess?" "Tom, remember that quantum variance equation you said would never actually show up in real-world conditions." Martinez watched as more sensors began detecting the pattern. "Well, I'm looking at it right now." There was a pause, followed by the sound of papers rustling. That's impossible. The only civilization theoretically capable of generating that signature it is. "The Nexus Armada," Martinez finished. "I know. How fast can you get to the mountain?" "I'll be there in 20. Don't let anyone touch that data." The line went dead. Martinez turned to Cooper, who was already organizing the overnight staff for extended operations. "Get me everything we have on the Armada's last known positions. And Ryan, not a word of this goes above ground. As far as the world is concerned, it's just another quiet night in paradise." She turned back to the holographic display, watching as the quantum distortion slowly crept closer to Earth's outer defense perimeter. Whatever was coming, Humanity's invisible shield was about to face its greatest test, and if they did their jobs right, no one would ever know it happened. The bright flash of atomic fire jolted Commander Martinez awake. She was drenched in cold sweat, her office chair's leather stuck to her back. The same nightmare, always the same one. Las Vegas, 2089. She didn't need to close her eyes to see it again. The memories were seared into her consciousness like brands, the pristine morning sky shattering as the Ravager ships punched through the atmosphere, the screams of tourists as the strip disappeared under plasma bombardment, and her father's last transmission from McCarran Airport. Initial casualty reports indicate heavy civilian losses along the strip. Dr. Anderson's voice drifted from her office doorway, reading from a yellowed after-action report. Colonel David Martinez's final defensive action bought Earth forces approximately 18 minutes of strategic preparation time. "I didn't hear you come in, Tom." Jessica wiped her eyes, straightening in her chair. The holographic displays still swirled with data from the quantum anomalies they detected hours earlier. 18 minutes, Anderson continued, his usual eccentric energy subdued. "That's how long your father and the 5th Fighter Wing held the line. 18 minutes that changed the course of human history." Jessica remembered watching from the Cheyenne Mountain bunker, a 19-year-old cadet forced to observe as her father led Earth's last conventional military response. The Ravagers had expected humanity to throw everything they had at them: nuclear weapons, experimental energy weapons, perhaps even a few primitive spacecraft. Instead, they got Colonel Martinez and 36 F-35s armed with nothing but standard missiles and unwavering courage. "They were testing us," Jessica said, standing to pour them both coffee. "Everyone knows that now. The Ravagers wanted to see how we'd react, what weapons we'd reveal." Anderson nodded, accepting the steaming cup. "And your father gave them exactly what they expected to see. Brave but hopelessly outmatched humans fighting with primitive projectile weapons, right up until the last second." The memory played out in vivid detail, her father's squadron scattering the alien fighters, drawing them into complex aerial maneuvers that looked desperate, but actually served a crucial purpose. Every dodge, every weave, every seemingly futile attack run had been carefully choreographed to keep the Ravagers focused on the sky, not on the ground, where the prototype defense grid was powering up for the first time. The Ravagers never understood why their ships started falling out of the sky, Anderson mused, his reflection ghostly in the office window. One minute they were winning, the next their systems just failed. No dramatic explosions, no heroic last stands. Their mighty armada simply discovered that Earth's atmosphere had become incompatible with their technology. Jessica touched the silver wings pinned to her uniform, her father's wings. He knew it was a suicide mission. The grid needed time to achieve quantum coherence, and someone had to keep the Ravagers occupied until then. "Your father understood something fundamental about humanity that day," Anderson said, setting down both his coffee and the old report. "Something that became the cornerstone of our entire defense strategy. He proved that our greatest strength isn't our weapons or our technology. It's our ability to let our enemies underestimate us." A soft chime interrupted them as new data scrolled across the holographic display. The quantum fluctuations they detected were intensifying, moving closer to Earth's outer defense perimeter. "The Nexus Armada," Jessica said, studying the patterns. "They're different from the Ravagers. More sophisticated, more patient." Anderson's eyes gleamed with that familiar mix of scientific curiosity and strategic calculation. "But they're making the same fundamental mistake. They think they're hunting primitive prey, when in reality, they're walking into humanity's web," Jessica finished. She straightened her uniform and squared her shoulders. "Well, let's make sure my father's lesson wasn't wasted. Initiate Protocol Omega, full spectrum. Let's show them just how primitive we aren't." As Anderson left to prep the grid's quantum cores, Jessica touched her father's wings one more time. The Ravagers had taught humanity the price of being seen as weak, but they'd also taught them the value of appearing helpless right up until the moment you proved to be anything but. The real battle was about to begin. And just like her father, Jessica intended to make every second count. Dr. Thomas Anderson stood in his private lab, surrounded by floating holographic equations that cast an ethereal blue glow across the cluttered space. Empty coffee cups and half-eaten protein bars littered his desk, evidence of another marathon research session. But it wasn't the quantum calculations that held his attention. Instead, he stared intently at an old gaming console from the 2020s. "You're probably wondering why I keep this antique here," he said to Lieutenant Cooper, who had been sent to fetch him for another emergency briefing. "Would you believe this old thing inspired Earth's entire defense strategy?" Cooper picked up one of the dusty game cases. "Stealth Mission IV, Shadow Protocol." Anderson smiled, his eyes distant with memory. "I was 12 when I first played it. The game taught you that the best way to win wasn't with bigger weapons. It was by becoming invisible, not just hiding, mind you, but existing in plain sight while being completely overlooked." He waved his hand through the holographic equations, rearranging them into a complex three-dimensional lattice. Everyone else was trying to build better shields, stronger weapons, but I kept thinking about those games, about how the most successful predators in nature aren't always the biggest or strongest. The lattice expanded, showing Earth at its center with countless overlapping fields extending into space. Take the leaf-tailed gecko, for instance. It doesn't just camouflage itself. It becomes functionally invisible by manipulating how light interacts with its surroundings. We didn't need to build an impenetrable wall around Earth. We needed to make space itself work for us. Cooper watched as simulated alien scan beams passed harmlessly through the field matrix. The quantum arrays. Exactly. Anderson pulled up his original design documents. Traditional stealth technology tries to absorb or deflect detection signals. But what if you could make those signals ignore you completely? Every particle in the universe is connected through quantum entanglement. We simply convinced space itself to look the other way. The scientist picked up a small device from his desk, a prototype quantum field generator no larger than a smartphone. The breakthrough came when I stopped thinking about defense as something we do and started thinking about it as something we are. Earth isn't protected by the grid. Earth is the grid. He activated the device, and a small section of his lab seemed to blur slightly. Every blade of grass, every grain of sand, every molecule of air is now part of one vast quantum network. When hostile ships scan us, they see exactly what we want them to see. A primitive world barely worth noticing. A priority alert flashed across his screens. Commander Martinez requesting his presence in the command center. The Nexus Armada's probe signals were getting stronger. But what happens when they decide to attack anyway? Cooper asked, following Anderson as he gathered his tablets and notes. Anderson's expression turned serious. That's when they learned the truth about humanity's greatest deception. Our defensive grid doesn't just hide us. It transforms the very laws of physics around our planet. The same principles that make us invisible let us redirect energy, manipulate gravity, even locally alter the flow of time itself. They stepped into the elevator heading up to command. The Ravagers thought they were attacking the helpless world. Instead, they found themselves trying to fight an enemy that could turn their own technology against them. The Nexus Armada is about to learn the same lesson, but on a scale they can't possibly imagine. The elevator doors opened to reveal a command center in full crisis mode. Commander Martinez was coordinating with global defense stations, preparing for what might be the grid's greatest test. "You know what the truly ironic part is?" Anderson said, watching the tactical displays light up with incoming threats. "Even after all these years, after every alien race that's tried and failed to breach our defenses, they still haven't figured out our real secret." "Which is?" Cooper asked. "The greatest defense system ever created wasn't built to be invisible." Anderson smiled as he began initializing the grid's quantum cores. "It was built by people who grew up playing games where the winning move was to make your enemies think they were the ones in control, right up until the moment they realized they never stood a chance. The quantum alert klaxon was almost musical. 3 soft, ascending tones that belied the gravity of their meaning. Commander Martinez watched as the holographic display transformed, countless red warning indicators blooming like deadly flowers in the space around Earth's outer defense perimeter. "Show me the signature analysis," she ordered, her voice steady despite the tension coursing through the command center. The massive screens shifted, displaying patterns that made several junior analysts gasp. Dr. Anderson stepped forward, his usually scattered demeanor focused to a razor's edge. "It's them. The quantum variance matches every theoretical model we have of Nexus technology. But this," he manipulated the display, highlighting a complex energy pattern. "This is something new." "Define new, Tom." Martinez didn't like the way Anderson's hands trembled slightly as he worked. "They've developed a metamaterial that can bend quantum fields," he explained, pulling up comparison data. "It's like, imagine someone invented a fabric that could make light forget its own rules. That's what we're seeing. They're not just trying to be stealthy. They're attempting to rewrite the fundamental laws of physics around their ships." Lieutenant Cooper's voice cut through the nervous murmurs. "Commander, we're detecting spatial distortions at these coordinates." A new cluster of red dots appeared on the display. "They're using some kind of scattered approach. Not just one fleet, but dozens of smaller groups, each using different stealth technologies." Martinez nodded grimly. "They're probe mapping our defenses. Each group will test a different approach, gathering data on how we respond." She turned to Anderson. "How much can they see?" "On the surface, nothing but what we want them to see. Civilian satellites, routine space traffic, the occasional military training exercise." Anderson brought up the grid's status display. "But they're being clever. Each probe carries a slightly different quantum signature. They're trying to find resonant frequencies that might reveal our true defensive capabilities." Martinez squared her shoulders. "Initiate Protocol Omega. Full spectrum deployment, but maintain our public facade. I want every layer of the grid running at maximum capacity, but it has to look like business as usual on Earth." The command center erupted into controlled chaos as orders were relayed and systems activated. Deep beneath the mountain, quantum cores hummed to life. Around the planet, millions of microscopic sensors shifted to combat readiness, all while appearing completely dormant. "Interesting," Anderson muttered, studying a new data stream. "They're not just testing our defenses, they're watching our civilian responses, looking for patterns in internet traffic, power grid usage, even social media activity that might indicate we've detected them. Then let's give them something to watch." Martinez smiled thinly. "Cooper, implement the Mockingbird protocol. I want every digital system on Earth to act exactly as a primitive civilization would when they're completely unaware they're about to be invaded." Cooper's fingers flew across his console. "Yes, ma'am. Deploying digital camouflage now. Twitter bots are arguing about celebrity drama. Netflix is streaming normally. And I've got 3 different cat videos going viral." A new alert chimed, more urgent this time. The first wave of Nexus probes had crossed the Jupiter orbital line, their sophisticated stealth systems making them nearly invisible to conventional detection methods. But to the quantum-enabled grid, they might as well have been broadcasting their positions with floodlights. "They're using a dispersed attack pattern," Anderson observed, "trying to overwhelm our sensor coverage by attacking from multiple vectors simultaneously. Classic Nexus tactics, the same approach they used to overwhelm the defenses of 17 other worlds." Martinez touched her father's wings, a habit she'd developed in moments of critical decision. "But those worlds didn't have our advantages. They tried to fight force with force." She turned to address the command center. "We're going to do something different. Initialize the quantum field matrices. Let's show the Nexus Armada why Earth's perfect defense record isn't just luck." As the grid powered up to meet the threat, Martinez couldn't help but smile. The Nexus Armada was about to learn what happened when you mistook humanity's greatest strength, the ability to appear harmless, for weakness. The real battle was about to begin, and Earth's invisible shield was ready. Aboard the Nexus command ship Eternal Dominion, Fleet Commander Zixtal watched with smug satisfaction as the first wave of probes approached the primitive planet. The massive view screen showed Earth rotating peacefully below, its scattered lights and primitive satellite network completely oblivious to their presence. "Status of stealth systems," he demanded, mandibles clicking with anticipation. "Operating at peak efficiency, Commander. Our quantum shrouds are perfect. These humans won't even know we're here until—" The tactical officer's voice cut off in confusion. "Sir, we've lost contact with Probe Group Alpha." Zixtal's anterior eyes narrowed. "Lost contact how?" "They just vanished. No distress signal, no debris. They were there, and then—" The officer's appendages danced across the control interface. "Wait, getting telemetry from Group Beta. They're reporting gravitational anomalies." In the Earth Defense Command Center, Martinez watched the first engagement play out across the holographic display. "Status of the gravity nets. Operating within parameters," Cooper reported. "First wave redirected successfully. Their probe ships are now in a stable orbit around Saturn, though they probably think they've been torn apart by some kind of natural phenomenon." Anderson chuckled from his station. "The beauty of quantum-locked gravity wells. To their sensors, it just looks like they hit a patch of space where physics stopped making sense." "Launch the second wave," Zixtal ordered, his confidence cracking slightly. "Full spectrum approach, maximum stealth protocols. Whatever destroyed Group Alpha, find it." Across the vast distance of space, hundreds of Nexus vessels shimmered into existence, each employing different stealth technologies. Some bent light around their hulls, others phased partially out of normal spacetime. All of them were invisible to conventional detection methods. None of them saw the cloud of microscopic robots waiting in high orbit. "Nanite swarms engaging," Cooper announced, targeting their propulsion systems and sensor arrays. Martinez nodded approvingly as the dots representing enemy ships began blinking out one by one. Not destroyed, simply rendered harmless, their advanced technology compromised by machines smaller than dust particles. "Ma'am," a junior analyst called out, "they're adapting. The third wave is deploying some kind of electromagnetic pulse." "Right on schedule," Anderson said, activating another layer of defenses. "Initiate the mirror protocol." Aboard the Eternal Dominion, chaos erupted as reports flooded in. The electromagnetic pulse, designed to destroy any automated defenses, had somehow been reflected back at their own ships. Dozens of vessels hung dead in space, their systems overloaded by their own weapons. "Impossible," Zixtal raged. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. They shouldn't even be able to detect us, let alone—" "Sir, ground-based transmissions still show no signs of alert. Their military channels are discussing routine training exercises, and their entertainment networks are broadcasting something called reality television." Martinez sipped her coffee, watching the Nexus Armada's frustration play out in real time. "How's our public facade holding up?" "Perfect, Commander," Cooper replied. "Social media is trending with celebrity gossip. Weather reports are normal, and 3 different countries are arguing about sports matches. As far as the world is concerned, it's just another quiet Tuesday." Anderson's console beeped urgently. "They're preparing something big. Energy readings from their command ship are off the charts." "Good," Martinez said, setting down her coffee. "Time to show them why Earth's defense record remains perfect. Initiate Phase 2. The quantum grid hummed to life, invisible fields of force extending through space like a spider's web. As the Nexus Armada prepared their master stroke, humanity's true defenses waited silently, ready to turn their own strength against them. In orbit, the ballet of attack and defense continued, with Earth's automated guardians systematically dismantling one of the galaxy's most feared military forces, all without anyone firing a single visible shot. The silent battle raged on, witnessed only by those chosen to protect humanity's greatest secret. Sometimes the best way to win a war is to make your enemy think there isn't one. Report. Fleet Commander Zixtal's voice thundered across the bridge of the Eternal Dominion. The ship's quantum displays flickered with cascading failure notifications. 4 waves of attacks, and they had nothing to show for it except disabled ships and inexplicable sensor readings. Sir, analysis of the anomaly suggests. The science officer's scales paled. The space around Earth isn't behaving according to universal constants. It's as if reality itself is rejecting our presence. Zixtal slammed his appendage against his command chair. Impossible. They're primitives. Their most advanced weapons are chemical rockets and radio waves. In the Earth Defense Command Center, Dr. Anderson watched the enemy's confusion with academic interest. Fascinating. They're so convinced of their superiority that they're ignoring the evidence right in front of them. That's their weakness, Martins replied, studying the tactical display. They can't imagine that a primitive species could have surpassed them. Tom, what are they trying now? Anderson adjusted his glasses, examining the new data streams. They're attempting to synchronize their quantum drives to create a breach in spacetime. Rather clever, actually. If our defenses were what they think they are, it would work perfectly. And since they're not, Martins allowed herself a small smile. Since they're not, Anderson grinned, they're about to give us a perfect opportunity to demonstrate why you don't try to manipulate quantum fields around a planet that's essentially one giant quantum computer. Aboard the Nexus flagship, Zixtal watched as his fleet's most sophisticated ships moved into formation. The quantum synchronization would tear a hole in space itself, bypassing any possible defense system these humans might have hidden. Synchronization at 85%, his tactical officer reported. 90%, 95%. Finally, Zixtal chittered. Let's show these primitives what real power looks like. Synchronization complete. Initiating quantum breach in 3, 2, 1. The universe seemed to hold its breath. Now, Martinez commanded. Anderson's fingers danced across his console. Initiating quantum mirror protocol. Redirecting their energy through the planetary grid. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, time seemed to stutter. Zixtal watched in horror as the quantum breach, instead of tearing through space toward Earth, began to fold in upon itself. The carefully coordinated energy of hundreds of ships twisted, turned, and reflected, not from any visible shield or barrier, but as if space itself had decided to rewrite its own rules. What's happening? He demanded. Sir, the breach. It's being reflected. But not just reflected, it's being transformed. The quantum signatures are inverting, becoming. The science officer never finished his sentence. In a flash of precisely calculated energy, every ship involved in the synchronization attempt found itself transmuted into its quantum mirror image. Weapons became sensors, engines became life support systems, and stealth devices became beacons broadcasting their presence across half the galaxy. Status report, Martinez called out, watching the chaos unfold on her displays. Cooper couldn't quite keep the awe out of his voice. Quantum mirror successful. 47 enemy capital ships have been, well, transformed is the best word I can think of. They're still intact, but their technology isn't quite working the way they expect anymore. Anderson nodded appreciatively. It's like teaching a bully physics by making them punch themselves with their own fist. Everything they try to do to us just gives us more control over the battlefield. A new alert flashed across the main screen. Martinez leaned forward, reading the energy signatures. They're charging something big. Really big. Their primary weapon system, Anderson confirmed. The one they've used to crack planetary defenses on 17 other worlds. They're desperate now, willing to reveal their full capabilities. Martinez touched her father's wings again, drawing strength from the memory they carried. Good. Let them come at us with everything they have. It'll make the lesson stick better. The command center hummed with quiet efficiency as Earth's defenders prepared for the next phase of battle. Outside, in the cold void of space, the Nexus Armada was about to learn that sometimes the deadliest force in the universe isn't the one that shows its strength. It's the one that knows how to turn your own strength against you. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion thrummed with power as Zixtal initiated their final protocol. Emergency klaxons wailed as safety systems were deliberately overridden. The massive ship's quantum core pulsed with dangerous energy, its light casting ominous shadows across the alien commander's face. "Begin charging the Worldbreaker," he ordered, all four of his eyes fixed on the seemingly defenseless Earth below. "If we cannot conquer this world, we will make an example of it." In Earth's Defense Command Center, Anderson's face went pale as he read the energy signatures. "They're powering up something massive. The quantum fluctuations. I've never seen anything like it." Martinez studied the readings, her expression grim. "Analysis. They're creating a cascading quantum disruption field. It's designed to unravel a planet's magnetic field at the subatomic level." Anderson's fingers flew across his console. "In theory, it could tear Earth apart from the inside out." Cooper looked up from his station. "Should we start evacuating population centers?" "No," Martinez said firmly, a slight smile playing at her corners of her mouth. "Tom, is the Jupiter protocol ready?" Anderson's eyes widened. "You want to use that? Now? We've never tested it at this scale. My father didn't have the luxury of testing the first grid before using it," Martinez replied. "Sometimes you have to trust that your best shot is good enough." Aboard the Eternal Dominion, the Worldbreaker's charge reached critical levels. The weapon had destroyed 17 civilizations, each more advanced than Earth. The humans' primitive technology would have no defense against it. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "Worldbreaker at 90% charge. The target's magnetic field is already showing signs of destabilization." Zixtal's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. "Let them feel true power. Fire when ready." "They're firing," Cooper announced. Martinez's voice cut through the tension. "Initiate Jupiter protocol. Full power. Now." Anderson took a deep breath and activated humanity's most ambitious defense system. Around Earth, millions of quantum field generators activated simultaneously. The planet's entire defensive grid, every particle of air, every grain of sand, every drop of water became part of one vast quantum equation. "Converting hostile energy signature," Anderson reported, his voice steady despite the strain. "Establishing quantum entanglement field. Now." On the Eternal Dominion's bridge, Zixtal watched in triumph as the Worldbreaker's energy beam lanced toward Earth. Victory was finally. The beam never reached its target. Instead, space itself seemed to fold, twist, and reshape around the planet. The Worldbreaker's energy disappeared into what looked like a cosmic lens, its power caught in an impossible gravitational dance. "What's happening?" Zixtal demanded. His answer came in the form of a sensation, a subtle shift in reality around his fleet. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of advanced technology suddenly found itself bound together in an enormous quantum equation. And then, in an instant that defied conventional physics, the entire Nexus Armada vanished. "Transfer complete," Anderson announced, slumping in his chair. "All hostile vessels have been successfully relocated to stable orbit around Jupiter." The command center erupted in cheers, but Martinez held up her hand for silence. "Show me." The main display shifted, revealing hundreds of Nexus ships now floating harmlessly in precise formation around the gas giant. Their weapons were disabled, their quantum drives offline, not through destruction, but through the precise manipulation of space-time itself. "Send the message," Martinez ordered. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, now helplessly orbiting Jupiter, Zixtal received the transmission. It was text only, in perfect Nexus script. "Your weapons are disabled. Your drives are offline. You are alive because we choose to be better than those who would destroy what they cannot conquer. Remember this day. Remember that Earth's defenses remain perfect not because we destroy our enemies, but because we choose how to defeat them. You have one standard cycle to leave our solar system. This mercy will not be offered twice. The message was signed simply, humanity. For the first time in his long military career, Fleet Commander Zixtal felt something he'd never experienced before, gratitude for a defeat. Because in that defeat, he finally understood. Earth wasn't defended by weapons or shields. It was defended by something far more powerful, the wisdom to know that true strength lies not in destroying your enemies, but in showing them why they should never have been your enemies in the first place. Commander Jessica Martinez stood at her father's memorial, the early morning sun casting long shadows across the restored Las Vegas Strip. The plaque was simple, Colonel David Martinez. He gave us time when we needed it most. She placed a fresh coffee cup next to the small collection of items left by other visitors, a tradition started by pilots who remembered him as the commander who always made sure his people had their coffee before missions. "You would have loved this one, Dad," she whispered, touching the silver wings on her uniform. "The whole thing played out exactly like one of your training scenarios." Her quantum comm buzzed softly. Dr. Anderson's voice came through. "Morning debrief is starting. Thought you might want to see this." In the command center, the morning shift was already analyzing data from the previous night's engagement. To the rest of the world, it had been just another quiet evening. Social media was buzzing about a celebrity wedding. There had been 3 major sporting events, and someone's cat video had gone viral. Perfectly normal activities for a planet that had no idea it had just survived an attempted invasion. Anderson was in his element, excitedly showing junior analysts the data streams. "Look at these quantum signatures. The way their weapon tried to unravel our magnetic field. Brilliant design. Really, completely wrong approach, of course, but brilliant." Cooper, running on what had to be his 10th cup of coffee, was updating the grid's engagement logs. Another perfect defense. That makes what, 17 attempted incursions this year alone. 18, Martins corrected, entering the room. "Don't forget that scout ship that accidentally drifted into our orbit last month." The main display showed the Nexus Armada, now reduced to a scattered fleet of ships limping away from the solar system. Their mighty weapons were silent, their advanced drives operating at minimum power, not because of battle damage, but because Earth's defense grid had literally rewritten the laws of physics around their technology. "Latest intelligence from our deep space arrays," Cooper reported. "They're spreading the word. Earth is now classified as a quantum anomaly zone, too primitive to be worth invading, but too strange to risk approaching." Anderson chuckled. The perfect cover story. They'd rather believe Earth exists in some kind of natural defensive phenomenon than accept that we've surpassed their technology. A junior technician, recently transferred to the command center, raised her hand. "Mom, I don't understand. Why do we maintain this deception? With the technology we have, we could be the dominant force in the galaxy. Why pretend to be primitive?" Martinez smiled, remembering asking her father the same question years ago. She walked to the window, looking out at the bustling city that had risen from the ashes of humanity's first contact. "Because, Lieutenant, the greatest victory isn't the one that everyone talks about. It's the one that no one realizes happened at all. Every species that's achieved spaceflight has followed the same pattern. Develop technology, build weapons, establish dominance. They expect us to do the same." She turned back to the room. But humanity chose a different path. We learned that true power isn't about showing strength. It's about having strength and choosing when not to show it. Our perfect defense record isn't maintained by destroying our enemies. It's maintained by understanding that the best way to win a war is to make your potential enemies realize that attacking you would be pointless. The morning sun cast long shadows through the command center windows as Earth's defenders settled in for another quiet day of protecting their world. In orbit, satellites continued their normal broadcasts. Air traffic controllers guided planes through routine flight paths. And somewhere in deep space, the once mighty Nexus Armada nursed its wounded pride, having learned what 17 other would-be invaders had discovered. Sometimes the most powerful civilizations in the universe aren't the ones that show their strength. They're the ones wise enough to know that true power lies in choosing how and when to never need it at all. Commander Martinez picked up her coffee cup, smiling as she read the latest social media trends. Just another normal day on Earth, exactly as planned. After all, the greatest triumph isn't the victory everyone sees. It's the one that remains perfectly, beautifully unspoken.